Okay, let's dive right in. The source throws us into this really vivid scene. Imagine stepping into Berlin. It's 1964, but not our 1964.
Not at all. It's this alternate history, and the first thing that hits you, according to the source, is just the sheer scale.
Yeah, the scale. Albert Speer's architectural vision, but
Yeah.
like completely realized. It describes the central avenue, what was it, 123 meters wide?
Uh-huh. Incredibly wide. And then this massive arch at the entrance, 118 meters high.
And the amount of granite the source actually calculates, enough for like 49 Paris Arcs de Triomphe.
It's staggering. And that's just the entrance. At the end, you've got the National Assembly Hall.
Right, the biggest building in the world in this timeline, 250 meters tall.
And it could hold 180,000 people. But the wildest detail, the one that really sticks with you.
The weather thing.
Yeah. The source says the collective breath inside this massive dome would actually gather, form clouds.
And create its own rain. A fine mist. That's just insane.
It really is. It paints this picture of overwhelming, almost unnatural power right from the start.
And it's crucial to remember, this is fiction. It's from the novel Fatherland. It's designed to feel imposing, right? To project total dominance.
Absolutely. Architecture as a statement of absolute control.
And the source makes an interesting point here about how that feeling, that grand scale, might feel familiar to some readers.
Yeah, it draws a parallel. The massive avenues, the space for huge rallies, compares it to 1960s Beijing, Chang'an Street, Tiananmen Square.
It's suggesting that different regimes, even with totally different ideologies, sometimes arrive at similar architectural ways of expressing power, centralized power.
Exactly. It's a fascinating observation.
So that's kind of our mission for this deep dive. We're looking at Fatherland and also another source about language.
Right, a very powerful
And we want to pull out the key insights for you, looking at the chilling details of this alternate history, but also how control works more broadly, how societies get shaped.
Not just by buildings, but by subtler things, too.
Definitely. So to get this 1964, we need to understand how history changed in this world. The source says the split happened earlier than you might think.
Yeah, well before 1943. The source pinpoints some key moments.
Okay, like 1943, Germany defeats the Soviets on the Eastern Front.
And crucially, gets the Caucasus oil fields. That's a game changer. Cripples the Soviet war effort.
Then 1944, they find out Enigma's broken.
But react fast. Develop a new code, and that lets them blockade Britain successfully.
Leading to British surrender. Churchill and others escaping to Canada, the source says.
Right. Meanwhile, the U.S. side. 1945, they drop the bomb on Japan. Japan surrenders. That part's the same.
But then the timeline veers sharply again. 1946.
Germany gets the bomb, their own nuclear weapon.
And they don't just keep it quiet. They launch a V-3 rocket over New York City.
Yeah, but not detonating it. It's a warning shot, a demonstration of capability to the U.S., basically saying, don't mess with us.
Wow. Chillin'. So by 1947,
Germany leads the formation of a European Union, consolidating its power. The U.S. helps the Soviets who've retreated behind the Urals.
setting up this German-American Cold War. End of WWII in this timeline. Start of a new global standoff.
And that brings us to 1964. Berlin, now the world's largest city, 10 million people. That's the stage.
Okay, so into this world steps our protagonist, Xavier.
Right, and he's an insider, an SS criminal police officer, described as professional, diligent.
He's working within this, well, the source calls it an Orwellian superpower state.
And it's a tense time. Hitler's 75, President Kennedy is about to visit Berlin.
For Hitler's birthday, ostensibly, but the real goal is a peace treaty.
Yeah, ending that long hostility between the U.S. and this greater German Reich. High stakes.
So Xavier's job is just keep things stable in the capital before the visit.
Pretty much. But then, investigating what looks like a suicide.
He stumbles onto something huge, these confidential SS files.
Files revealing the truth about Auschwitz.
And for him, this insider, it changes everything.
Yeah.
The source says it just shatters the legitimacy of the whole regime in his eyes.
Yeah, it's that moment of realization he becomes a resistor.
His plan then is pretty bold. He teams up with an American journalist.
Trying to get these files out, smuggle them to the U.S., expose the truth, and stop the treaty, all while dodging SS surveillance.
It doesn't end well for him. The source draws that parallel to 1984.
Exactly. Like Winston Smith, his individual fight against the system, it fails. The state's intelligence network, the tools of authoritarianism, they're just too overwhelming.
It's interesting, though. The source points out this fictional 1964 Germany isn't exactly like 1984.
Right. No constant telescreens watching everyone. It wasn't quite that level of technological surveillance.
The source suggests the book's real power is maybe more subtle, showing the numbness, the suppression felt by ordinary people.
The psychological weight of living under that kind of system rather than just the tech, a more grounded, perhaps more realistic portrayal of that aspect.
Okay, so sticking with that realism, the source highlights something else from the book that's deeply disturbing, maybe even more than Xavier's failure.
His son, Peely.
Yeah, his 10-year-old son. The source describes him, fond of his uniform, black shirt, blue shorts, eagerly applying to join the Pimpfen.
The German youngsters group. And that was real, right? The Pimpfen?
Absolutely real. A historical organization for 10-year-olds. The source even mentions the kinds of tests running, field exercises.
And studying party philosophy, indoctrination from a young age.
And then the specific incident. Xavier trying to say goodbye before he escapes.
And Peely delays him, asks him to read a story, seems innocent, but
it's not. He secretly reported his father to the SS.
leading directly to Xavier being captured at home by his own son's actions.
Peely's words to him, just bone-chilling. Dad, they'll help you. They'll reform you. You'll come back.
It's awful. And the source immediately links it to 1984 again.
Right, Parsons' daughter. Reporting him for thought crime, for muttering against Big Brother in his sleep.
Yeah, the source even describes her, the uniform, the stick, the threats. Shoot you. Send you to salt mines.
But the source's reflection on this is key. It's not just about kids being fierce or blindly obedient.
No, it's presented as illustrating the power of the organization.
This concept of the organization. What does that mean exactly?
Well, the idea is that the kids, like Peely, have this incredibly strong sense of belonging to it. The uniform is a symbol of that.
And the belief, the source says, was that without the uniform, without being part of the organization,
It's basically nothing. Your entire identity, your value, is tied up in this collective entity, the state, the party, whatever form it takes.
that idea, the organization, shaping people,
Mm-hmm.
that leads perfectly into the second source the writer discusses.
The Language of the Third Reich by Klemperer,
Mm-hmm.
a German linguist who lived through it all.
And his core argument, highlighted in the source, is fascinating. He said the most powerful Nazi propaganda wasn't the obvious stuff, like speeches or posters.
No, it was much sneakier. It was how everyday words were subtly twisted, given new meanings,
And then just repeated relentlessly, constantly.
until they became party language,
Yeah.
and they seeped into people's minds almost unconsciously, not through logic, but just sheer repetition.
The source gives a fantastic example. The German word for organization, Organisierung.
Right. Historically, a respected word, used kind of sparingly.
But after 1933, under the Nazis, its use just exploded.
Became incredibly common, embedded in how people thought about everything.
Klemperer gives these anecdotes, right? Our source mentions two.
Yes, simple, everyday things, like in 1936, he gets his car carburetor fixed, the young mechanic finishes.
And doesn't ask, how was my work? Or how's the repair?
No. He asks, how was my job organized? Using that specific word.
Wow. And the other one, soap.
Klemperer asks a shopkeeper if he can buy good soap. The shopkeeper doesn't say, we're out, or you can't buy it.
He says,
You can't buy it, you have to organize it.
you have to organize soap.
Exactly. And the source's take on this is really insightful. It suggests people became so saturated with this idea of organization that everything comes from above, assigned down.
The basic words for independent action, like work, buy, do, they almost started to fade from how people thought.
Yeah, their thinking itself got subtly reshaped by the constant presence and meaning of the organization.
So let's try and connect all this. We've got the imposing architecture in Fatherland, setting a physical stage for power.
Then the social control, the indoctrination, especially of the young, like Peely, tying identity completely to the organization.
And Klemperer showing how language itself, the very words people use, can be manipulated to reinforce that structure, to limit the idea of individual action outside the organization.
It paints this picture of authoritarian power being really pervasive. It's in the buildings, the social pressure, the words you speak and hear every single day.
It's not just secret police and decrees. It's woven into the fabric of life.
Which leads to that final kind of provocative thought from the source.
The speculation that maybe the real ruler in fictional 1964, or maybe even, today.
Isn't a specific country or leader,
Yeah.
but the organization itself. that abstract structure, that ideology.
That's a big idea. So for you listening, what does pulling apart these sources tell us about power, how it works?
How do these things, grand visions, historical stories, social pressures, controlling language, how do they actually shape societies?
And maybe more importantly, how does being aware of these mechanisms, seeing how language is used, how belonging is framed, how individuality is valued or devalued, how does that help you navigate the world now?
Make you a more informed citizen, perhaps.
So quite a journey. Through this alternate 1964 Berlin, the chilling lessons from Fatherland, and Klemperer's insights on language.
Yeah, from the monumental down to the mundane word choice.
And we'll leave you with that final thought to chew on. This idea of the organization, could it be, in its different forms,
State, corporation, movement,
a
whatever.
more fundamental kind of power than we usually acknowledge,
Yeah.
shaping how we see things, then and now?
What kinds of organization do you see influencing the world around you today? Something to think about.